You're listening to Lansdowne Roar Live, your Irish football news and nostalgia where you, the fans, get to have your say. Championship season came to an exciting end yesterday. We chat about the Irishmen promoted to the Premier League and those still in contention. We bring you three granny rulers who've emerged as potential recruits for the boys in green, including a 16-year-old wonder kid. And the latest manager odds with some minor changes in the betting market. This plus much more on Lansdowne Roar Live. Hello everyone, Nick here, filling in for Dave tonight and filling in for Martin as well. They just don't love you like I do. So I'm doing the solo tonight. It's great to be back and it's great to be joined by you. And as always, as David would always say, we want you to have your say, leave a comment and get involved as always. So it's, I haven't been on in a little while. It's nice to actually be back. I mean, the lads, will I give their excuses? I don't know. David, I don't really know what David's at. I just don't think he loves you. And then Martin actually had a better excuse. He was actually part of I won't give you the real reason why Martin isn't here, but the other reason why he isn't here is that he was managing the team that we sponsor, Enfield Town's under 12s, I believe. They won their league today. So congratulations to Enfield Town's under 12s. We sponsor them. We actually have our logo on their jersey. So we like to claim anything that we can get. Well, David does anyway. So, no, it is great to be back. Great to be hosting. It's been a long time. So I'm looking forward to getting into it. So, look, we'll launch right in. As we know, very, very busy week with the championship. An exciting kind of finish. As we know, Leicester City went up and Ipswich went up in the second automatic promotion spot. And a number of playoff spots that were secured in between. One thing that we did miss, and so as we know, we weren't around last week. Unfortunately, none of us were available. That is life. This is not our professional job, unfortunately, as much as Dave would like it to be. It's not our professional job. But something that we did miss out on was some of the promoted players in League One. So big congratulations to Portsmouth. Of course, Anthony Scully, Joe Rafferty and Conor Shaughnessy all going up with them. Conor Shaughnessy, of course, getting in the League One team of the season. So fair play to Portsmouth. Looking forward to seeing them back in the championship after a long time. And Derby County, of course, finishing second. Conor Harahan captaining the team and Aaron Cashin, who also made the League One team of the season. Part of that Derby team as well, as was James Collins, who squared in with a fair few goals that season. And as we mentioned as well, this is something I think we mentioned on our socials. We didn't necessarily mention it on the show, but 16 Irishmen relegated from League One, which is staggering really. A couple of them were loan players, but interesting to note that Sean Maguire, who was the only senior cap player in that relegated 16 was among the players. Of course, he went down with Carlisle United, which was pretty unfortunate. But look, I mean, I'm sure he'll get a move. Rumours actually that he's bought a house in Cork, so perhaps a move back to Cork City. Who knows? So look, plenty to discuss regarding the championship. But before we do, I'm very, very smoked today, and I think I've every right to be. So back in August, as a lot of you might remember, we had a fantastic collaboration episode with the Second Tier Podcast, who are the premier championship podcast around. So we had a great chat with the lads just about our, I suppose, championship predictions and speaking about a lot of Irishmen who'd be involved. So following that episode, the Second Tier Podcast lads actually put out a post on, it was then Twitter before it became X, or maybe it was X, I'm not 100% sure. But anyway, they were asking who, I suppose, who their followers or their listeners thought would get promoted. So I weighed in. So the Second Tier Podcast saying just anyone of the audio listeners. So who's finishing in the top two of the championship this season? And I commented under our socials, Leicester and Ipswich, 1 and 2. And underneath that was a lovely gentleman by the name of Macaroni, I suppose in homage to Massimo Macaroni, the former Middlesbrough player. And his comment was, sorry to hear you banged your head. What a load of rubbish. Ipswich will be lucky to finish top half on the first season back. Macaroni, that ended very well, didn't it? Aged well. Aged very, very well. So, I mean, look, I'm psychic. What can I say? My biggest regret was not putting any money on it. I think I would have come out with about €600 if I was to put a few bob in it. But not to worry, not to worry. Good to see them go up. And it's always nice to see a team go up who've had a long absence from the Premier League. Sick of seeing these yo-yo clubs. Leicester, not necessarily one of them exactly, but Ipswich, I mean, I think it's 22 years now. And I think I made a good point earlier that kind of on our socials that the last time Ipswich took to the field as a Premier League team. Ireland were just about to get ready for their last World Cup in 2002. Matt Holland, of course, part of both of those squads. So, yeah, interesting how times change, and it doesn't feel like that long ago since Ipswich were in the Premier League. But look, I'm obviously getting old. So, look, plenty of other talking points. First of all, I suppose congratulations to our two potential Ireland internationals. We still don't know if they're fully on board. Of course, Tom Cannon, there he is in all his glory. Of course, taking a little bit of time to decide if he's English or Irish. The Aintree-born striker there, probably his most underwhelming season. Since he's kind of made his breakthrough. Really good season last year with Preston North End. I think he got 8 goals and 20, something along those lines. 2 goals this term, probably a little bit underwhelming for him. But we have to remember as well that he had a broken vertebrae. So he essentially had a broken back. And did come back and is still kind of on the comeback from that injury. Of course, John O'Shea in the last window in one of his press conferences, I think the quote was something along the lines of that he'd no worries about Tom Cannon playing for Ireland. Now, whether that be that he's no worries that he will not get a cap, or he's no worries that he'll switch to England, we don't know. But what I would say is he's a top player. As I said, he's on the comeback from injury, and if he gets a bit of Premier League football next season, we'd be delighted to have him. And of course, congratulations to Casey McAteer. So no relation to Jason. I think a lot of people have kind of questioned that as well. No relation to him, but of course, Casey McAteer, another player, had a lot of injury issues this season. He actually scored in the game that clinched them the title in midweek against Preston. Lovely little header, actually. So he's a player that's been in and out of the squad, mainly owing to injury, but looking forward to seeing him in the Premier League next season. It seems more than certain that he is that he's on board with Ireland. It seems he acquired his passport while Stephen Kenny was still in charge, but obviously injuries and a few other bits and pieces kind of delayed that capping. And of course, he was injured in March, so he wasn't going to be in contention for John O'Shea. So it'll be interesting to see if he comes in to contention. And of course, Ipswich Town, who I've mentioned already, getting promoted. I predicted it, what can I say? And a couple of Irishmen who were involved there. So there's a nice little picture of Marcus Harness, who did play his part, mainly off the bench, didn't play a huge amount of games this season. And of course, Jack Taylor, I did have an image of him there somewhere, but I'm not 100% sure where it's gone. So obviously called up into the Ireland squad a few times. Very good midfielder, very, very highly rated. I think Darragh McAnthony, who's the Peterborough chairman, who sold Taylor to Ipswich. I think he tipped him to be a Premier League player in the next few years, and he got that pretty right. Don't think he thought he'd go up with Ipswich. Again, a lot of appearances off the bench. He was actually a little bit sloppy in the game against Huddersfield that clinched some promotion. But look, very good player nonetheless. And with Josh Cullen looking certain to go down with Burnley, it's nice to have a central midfielder getting promoted. And a big shout out to my fellow Malahide man, Rene Gilmartin, who is the goalkeeping coach with Ipswich, of course, is on the books with Ireland as well, part of John O'Shea's backroom team in March, and looks set to continue on with the backroom team in the summer. So well done to Rene, who's a very, very highly rated coach, of course, working under for man Kieran McKenna. Now, a couple of other things to mention in regards to the championship, and of course, Blackburn Rovers managed to stay up, mainly owing to this man, Sammy Smodics. He scored his 27th goal of the season, 33 in all competitions, which is absolutely phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal. I mean, a really, really good player. Naturally, there was a lot of chat throughout the season, whether he declared for Hungary, whether he declared for us, whether he declared for anyone. But, for the most part, it looks like he's more or less on board. 2 caps in March and will most likely be part of the squad in the games against Hungary and Portugal in the summer under John O'Shea. Unbelievable tally. Obviously, the chat at the moment is where exactly is he going to go? I mean, there's been a lot of clubs mentioned, I suppose. Sheffield United, Luton Town were 2 mentioned, 2 teams who are looking to go back down from back into the championship, unfortunately. But in the last week or so, there has been a rumour linking Smodics with Everton. So Everton look fairly safe. Wouldn't be a bad move, to be honest. I mean, whether or not he can kick on is a big question. I have often cited Victor Goikers, who was with Coventry City last season. He scored a ton of goals before he went to Sporting Lisbon, and now he's worth about, I think that the last quote I saw was something like 70, 80 million. Now, look, Smodics is a little bit older, probably not going to command that kind of fee or maybe attract the same kind of attention that Goikers is. But, he could look at him for inspiration and possibly go abroad. Who knows? It's very interesting to see where some Irishmen are going at the moment. But certainly a player who's probably come off his best ever season of his career. Very, very much a shock contender. I think last season he kind of made his name for being a very busy midfielder. He chased down back fours, he applied a lot of pressure, but didn't score a huge amount of goals for Blackburn last season. But a return of 27 from midfield is phenomenal. Getting in the championship team of the season. Probably robbed of the championship player of the season altogether. I think it was Cyril Somerville of Leeds United who got that. And if you think about it, if you put it into context, Smodics kept them up last game of the season, essentially. Obviously, a lot of results did go their way, but to score 27 goals, 33 in all competitions for a fairly poor, unstructured club that had a couple of managerial changes throughout the season is phenomenal. Like a really phenomenal kind of achievement. And it will be interesting to see if he stays at Blackburn or if he goes somewhere else. Blackburn could be one of those teams that, who knows, they could have a decent summer. They could get a couple of signings in. They might thrive from staying up, and who knows, they might be in promotion contention. So we'll watch this space very, very carefully to see where Sammy Smodics goes or if he stays put. So I suppose just a couple of other things to mention about the championship. So obviously there is another promotion place up for grabs. As we know, Southampton beat Leeds United on the last day of the season. Will Smallbone scoring in that game. Him, the injured Gavin Bazunu, and Ryan Manning all in contention to go up in the Premier League. They would be fairly fancied, I think. 3 players going up. By the looks of it, it's going to be 3 or 4 players going down with Burnley. You've got Darrell O'Shea, you've got Josh Cullen, as I mentioned already. Michael Obafemi will probably go back, and sadly they'll be relegated. Dara Costello on the books there as well, and Chidozie Ogbene with Luton. They're really struggling. So, from an Irish perspective, you would hope that Southampton do get the promotion spot, and I think they will fancy themselves. They play nice football. They've been very, very inconsistent this season, but Leeds are really plummeting. Norwich looking fairly solid. Of course, Shane Duffy there. Tony Springett's out on loan at the moment, so he didn't have a major part to play this season, but it would be good to see Shane Duffy back in the Premier League, especially after gambling and taking that move to Norwich. He's done very well. But I think one of the informed teams in the championship at the moment is West Bromwich Albion. Of course, Mikey Johnson on loan at West Brom from Celtic, and Jason Malumbi, who's had a fairly long injury layoff at the moment. He is on the books at West Brom, so who knows? If they get promoted, he might come back into the fray. Who knows? So plenty of Irishmen who could come into contention there. In regards to relegation, as I mentioned, Sammy Smodics did keep Blackburn down, but sadly a couple of Irishmen did go down. Scott Hogan, probably the most notable, going down with Birmingham City. And Peter Chioso of Rotherham United, unfortunately relegated as well. There wasn't a huge amount of first-team players between Rotherham, Huddersfield, or Birmingham City. But I think it's worth noting as well, and this is kind of a funny one, an interesting one, I suppose, the managerial situation at Birmingham City. Now, look, there's a lot of Irish links here, I suppose. I mean, John O'Shea was actually part of the coaching ticket under Wayne Rooney, but as we know, John Eustace, former Ireland assistant, he was appointed as manager last season, and he had them up to 6th. And if you look at the resources of Birmingham City, it was fairly healthy. They recruited pretty well. Eustace had them in a healthy position, but then they did hit a pretty bad run of form, and that ended up in him being dismissed. They brought in Tony Mowbray, someone who I actually tipped for the Ireland job, and I got a lot of flack for that, understandably. He came in, sadly had to go on sick leave. We're not entirely sure the full extent of that, but we do wish Tony well. And sorry, in between that, Wayne Rooney was appointed. I think that's one of the key things. So Wayne Rooney was appointed, and of course Birmingham absolutely plummeted. But John O'Shea was part of that coaching ticket, which is really, really interesting just to keep in mind. So his last job essentially was with Birmingham City, and then in came Tony Mowbray, and since then Gary Rowa came in as an interim manager to kind of fill the void. So a bit of a shit show. Of course, we know like Tom Brady's involved there, and we saw some of those clips of the American owners, the very cringy kind of clips of the American owners, kind of trying to get the crowd going, and I don't think they were overly impressed about it. But look, I personally think it's karma for running a football club badly. So Plymouth staying up. A couple of Irishmen there. So Tyreek Wright is probably the most notable one. Of course, formerly of Aston Villa. Finn Azaz doing his bit to keep them up earlier in the season before he left for Middlesbrough. So it's a great achievement. As I mentioned already, Sammy Smodics keeping Blackburn Rovers up. Andy Moran, part of that squad as well. So great to see the lads doing well there. And as I mentioned, a couple of lads getting promoted from League One to maybe fill those little voids left in the Championship. But I suppose another thing as well, just kind of, I suppose we've been putting a lot of content out, a lot of Championship content, a lot of Ipswich content out over the last few days. And the amount of flack that the championship is getting. Even I think we congratulated Tom Cannon and Casey McAteer. And look, there's question marks around their eligibility and their intentions of playing for Ireland. But people were kind of saying, why would you want a championship player? Of course we want a championship player. We don't have many championship players anymore, do we? I mean, what people need to realize, and I think what a lot of Ireland fans need to realize and kind of realign their expectations, is that our landscape of player pool is the championship, and the championship is a very, very good competition. I mean, flick between the 3 games yesterday and really, really good quality football. And what people forget is that the championship is packed with internationals. I mean, only a couple of months ago we played Belgium, and I can't remember his first name, but Fayet's the Leicester centre half was playing for Belgium. So, Belgium, I think, are third in the world, and they're picking championship players. Now, I'm not saying that they're picking a full squad of championship players. I think Argentina and maybe not the 2022 World Cup, but I think the World Cup before had a championship defender in there. Again, the name isn't coming to mind, but it's not a bad league. It's very, very healthily resourced. This was the most financed championship season that there's been so far. And I think people need to realize that huge amount of money and a huge amount of quality, top quality coaches. Yeah, it can be a bit batshit at times, but it's entertaining football, a little bit more rustic than the Premier League. And I suppose as an Ireland fan, I do find myself dipping into the championship a little bit more than the Premier League. I don't know why that is, but it's just something that I've got a huge interest in. And to be honest, I just really, really enjoy watching the football there. So what I'd like to hear from some of the listeners, if you're on the live, if you're listening back, obviously it's no good to you. You can actually leave a comment on Spotify. That's a new feature that we have. So you can actually reply to the questions in Spotify if you want to interact with us that way. But let us know who you think will be promoted via the playoffs. Will it be Shane Duffy's Norwich? Will it be the trio of Irishmen at Southampton? Will it be Mikey Johnson's West Brom? Of course, Mikey Johnson on absolute fire. Or will it be Leeds United, who have no Irishmen? Unless you count Patrick Bamford. But I think that ship has sailed. So, yes, let us know. So, just another thing that we want to bring to, I suppose, the listeners' attention, and I suppose a lot of people are aware about this, is 3 Granny Rule players who've kind of come into the headlines over the last few days. A lot of credit here to Conor McAvoy of Ireland Football Tracker, our editor-in-chief of the website. He has made us aware of a couple of these players. And the first one there is Kevin O'Toole. So Kevin O'Toole is a 25-year-old left back with New York City. He has actually only played about 31 first team games, which isn't that much for a 25-year-old. He hasn't played underage for the USA. He was born in New Jersey, but is eligible for Ireland, and did come out in an article back in February saying that he was interested in representing us. It is a position that we're fairly light on. We did put out a call to see if anyone knew much about the guy, and very, very mixed reviews. Some people saying, look, he's got a fantastic delivery. He's very, very good in the ball. And then a lot of other people saying that he's very, very light. He's probably not any better than some of the left backs we have, which says a lot because we don't have any, do we? But yeah, an interesting one. And as I said, someone who seems to be more or less on board. Whether the FAI have been in contact, I'm not entirely sure, but let us know what you think about that one. That is Kevin O'Toole of New York City. The next one then, so an interesting one really. This is Danny Armstrong of Kilmarnock. Now, I had great intentions to watch Danny Armstrong today. Kilmarnock were playing Rangers, and I had a few kind of errands to run earlier, and I came in a little bit late, and I said, it's no bother. I came in about half an hour into the game. I said, it's no bother. Like, I'm sure I haven't missed a huge amount. Tuned in, saw that Kilmarnock were down to 10 men. Couldn't really see Armstrong. I was like, Jesus, was he sent off? He wasn't. His teammate was sent off, and he was subbed off to kind of facilitate that. So, look, I had great intentions. So I did what any good fan channel does, any credible fan channel does. I went on Wikipedia, YouTube, and Transfer Market. That's my tip of the day. So anyway, Danny Armstrong of Kilmarnock, 26 years of age, formerly of Hamilton Academicals and Wolverhampton Wanderers. Did go through the youth system of Wolves. Left for Wraith Rovers, scoring, I think, 5 goals in 9 games, doing very, very well with them, securing a move to Ross County, back to Wraith Rovers, and in 2021 moved to Kilmarnock. Very highly rated player. From what I've heard, and from, I suppose, some of the information I've gotten from Kilmarnock fans and fans of the SPL, he's a very, very quick player. Was actually linked with Celtic in the summer, but no move materialised. And in the last couple of weeks, he has been linked with a call-up to the Scotland Euro 2024 squad. So he is a man in demand. He is very, very highly rated. A couple of Celtic fans actually chimed in and said that anytime he's played them, he's given the fullbacks a bit of hassle, and anytime they've seen him play against other SPL opposition, he's been very, very impressive. But they do cite his pace, and something that I kind of again not a massive detail, but something I'd always be aware about is the lack of balance in the current Ireland squad. I mean, we don't have that many left-footed wingers. And look, I think any kind of football coach worth their salt doesn't necessarily need a right footer and a left footer on the wing, but it does give options. It does give a bit of, I suppose, a bit of fluidity in terms of how you want to play. I mean, if you have a left footer and a right footer on either wing, it does give you a little bit more flexibility. It does give you a little bit more balance. It does allow you to play a little bit more open. And we don't have that many left footed wingers. I mean, James McLean's retired. Robbie Brady's turned more into a left wing back. Colin O'Dowda, sorry, Martin hasn't really done it over the last little while. And Neil Ferrugia has a pretty bad collarbone injury as far as I know. So he's going to be out for a little while. And then if you look at some of the other lads, I mean, Tyreek Wright, who I mentioned with Plymouth, he hasn't really kicked on. And then if you look at the likes of, say, Sean Moore with West Ham, yet to make his first team debut, there's not that many left-footed wingers available to us. And as I said, in terms of balance, Armstrong could maybe offer something. He could maybe offer a bit of depth. And a little bit like O'Toole, who I mentioned a couple of minutes ago, we don't have many left backs. We don't have many left-footed wingers. These guys could just offer a little bit of depth. They mightn't necessarily ever get capped. They mightn't necessarily ever start a game, but they would offer a bit of competition in positions that there is no competition, like essentially none. And as I mentioned, Armstrong could go to the Euros, could go to Celtic. He could be a player that we actually find very attractive in the not so distant future. And we kind of think, Jesus, maybe we should have gone in for this guy, you know. And as we know, like Steve Clark is a very well connected manager. He does dip into the SPL. He has got a very, very expansive scouting network. And Armstrong is making headlines over in Scotland. So from a Scottish perspective, there are calls from some fans to get him into the squad. So, you know, he's nothing to be frowned upon. Scotland are a superior team to us. You know, Scotland are going to a Euros. Scotland have Premier League players, and they are looking at calling this guy up. So I don't think we can be too ignorant to him. You know, as I said, I don't know a huge amount about him. My great intentions to watch him today. And of course, Kevin O'Toole. But the one granny rule player out of these three that I'm really, really excited about is this man here. This is 16-year-old. This is 16-year-old Grady McDonald. Canadian-born midfielder, currently with Vancouver FC in the Canadian Premier League. That's a fairly newly established professional competition. So it's not the Vancouver Whitecaps. It's not the MLS where Toronto and Vancouver and is a Montreal play as well. This is a fairly newly established league. A couple of Irish players, kind of underage players who've gone through that system as well. When he was 15, he signed for them. From the Vancouver Whitecaps, who of course are in the SPL. Now he's been capped for Ireland at under 15 level, under 16 level, and most recently in under 17 level, and is very, very highly rated. He has been capped for Canada, but it does seem like he's thrown his lot in with Ireland. And interestingly enough, he has actually had training stints with Blackburn Rovers in England and Schalke in Germany, of course, one of the sleeping giants of German football. And interestingly enough, Shamrock Rovers, he did have a little stint training with them. I think when he was kind of training with the Ireland underage setups. Now, this guy's only 16 and he made his debut for Vancouver yesterday. Very, very highly rated, meant to be a very, very technically good player, and someone who has kind of come to our attention recently. Connor, again, is someone who would have flagged Grady McDonald with us. So look, this is someone who seems to be on board, obviously with Kevin O'Toole obviously on board, but there's a lot of question marks about his ability. And Danny Armstrong, I mean, if that Scotland call comes, it's very, very hard to see if he will actually throw any kind of interest in with Ireland. He has mentioned Ireland. He did do an interview with Sky Sports recently. He did mention that he's eligible for Ireland, but this guy Grady McDonald is certainly someone to keep an eye out for, certainly someone to get excited about. And I suppose an excuse to watch the Canadian Premier League, any excuse to watch any new football leagues is great for me. So I suppose like the next thing, short show today, folks, by the way, before we get into the comments, but I suppose the latest thing we can do is kind of go through the odds for the Ireland job. We've only been talking about it for the last 6 months or so. So Sky Sports have actually stopped taking bets on John O'Shea by virtue of the fact that he's a caretaker manager. So he's basically odds on by default. So no odds really being given on John O'Shea at the moment. But following on from him, Chris Hughton is now 4-1. So he's moved up slightly from 7-1. Steve Bruce has climbed from 10-1 to 5-1. And Lee Carsley, who's already ruled himself out of the job, is up to 7-1, followed by Anthony Barry at 12-1, who is joined with Willie Sagnol of 12-1. Of course, Sagnol, I think, is kind of Martin and David's tip. Not necessarily their choice, but their tip. We spent a lot of time talking about Ireland managers and potential Ireland managers. As we know, we're going to be waiting a long time up until September. Given that kind of timeline, your money would have to be on Willie Sagnol, considering he has to get the Euros over and done with. But my money is still firmly on John O'Shea. Not my choice, but my tip. And I wish I went with that Leicester Ipswich tip. I'd be a very, very rich man at this stage. But yeah, that's the manager latest. Of course, it's important that we do mention it because it's not going away for a very, very long time. So it's that time of the night again. We're going to get into the comments, and not that many comments, very, very few comments, but we will go through them and we will get a move on with the show. So first comment of the day from Nuri Nurek. David and Martin bunking off, disgraceful behaviour. I know, Nuri. I know. I love you. They don't. It's been great filling in for Dave, by the way. I mean, adding a bit of panache to the show tonight. Mr. Ipswich Town, and I'm delighted. Ipswich have become kind of my new love. My new love, and that club I've kind of kept an eye on since I made that bold prediction. So Mr. Ipswich Town with his comments, come on Ipswich, Marcus Harness for Ipswich is eligible for Ireland. Yes, and I think what a lot of people forget is that Marcus Harness actually did travel with an Ireland squad in 2021, I believe. It was the game against it was actually 2020. It was the Nations League, the game against Bulgaria. I think it was a 1-1 draw, or was it a 0-0 draw? I can't really remember. I've kind of blanked it out of my mind. It was that grim, but he was actually brought along with the squad by Stephen Kenny. He didn't feature. He wasn't on the bench. He kind of came in with the squad. I don't think his paperwork had been done. He was kitted out in the full Ireland gear, and he sat in the stands. As we know, the stadiums were empty back then, back in the day. But no call-up has really happened. He dropped back down into League Two. I think he was in the Championship with Burton. And then he went to Ipswich, and he actually had a very good season with Ipswich last year. Very, very good season, but he hasn't quite adapted to the Championship as well. He's done all right. I think he got 2 goals this season and a couple of assists. I mean, look, their wingers were phenomenal. Amari Hutchison, was kind of keeping him out of the squad, and understandably so. And I can't remember his name, but Burns, is it Wes Burns, I think, another really, really good winger. And Broadhead, again, I don't know his first name, but Broadhead. I say I love Ipswich, and I can't name any of the players. But anyway, Harness was really an impact sub. He's got a bit about him, though. He's very, very pacey. He's quite creative. He's quite technically good in the ball. Don't have that many wingers. You never know. He might get a twist. I do wonder. I mean, I was looking at some stats recently, and it was the worst performing players per team in the Championship, and there was actually quite a few Irishmen featured in there. Jay Malumbi was actually one of them, and this is for games played. It's not kind of counting his injury, but Marcus Harness was the worst performing Ipswich player statistically. Now, it doesn't mean he's a bad player. I mean, some of these stats and some of these some of these figures are kind of pulled out of people's arses, but you'd wonder, will he be retained? Premier League gets very cutthroat. I mean, if you look at Nottingham Forest, the team that brought them up wasn't necessarily the team that they stuck with. They signed about 20 odd players, didn't they? I mean, Harry Arter still managed to survive it. He's still with them, but for the most part, it could be a thing that Marcus Harness is sold or is loaned out. And Jack Taylor's a player I really like, so it's more so hoping that Jack Taylor gets a bit of a run for Ipswich next season. But again, really was a bit part player. Really came off the bench, did all right, did have a few starts, but for the most part, he is a player that we would like to see, especially with Josh Cullen looking to go down. Archduke 8199. Why in God's name did you not stick even a fiver on that prediction, Archduke? I have been kicking myself for the last couple of months, because even it's funny with that with that tweet, because it's kind of gone viral on the second tier. We replied, so they were saying how I can't remember what the tweet was, something along the lines of that they actually predicted Ipswich as well. And they said that 70% of the comments were quite abusive and nasty. And I can understand why, but at the same time, it's very, very satisfying when you make a bold prediction and it pulls off. But it is only a prediction. I had a feeling. I had a feeling about Leicester. I mean, very strong team, very very gifted manager. Of course, he was on the books in Man City, and I just felt that their squad they retained enough players with that bit of experience. Your Wilfred Ndidi's and your Jamie Vardy's, and then of course, they brought in the likes of Connor Cody and Harry Winks, who were able to add that little bit of experience and add that little bit of quality. So I just had a feeling they'd go up. I didn't feel Leeds or Southampton would go up, so I kind of went with them. And then with Ipswich, I've monitored them quite quickly. They're a club I've always had a bit of a soft spot for, even from the time I was a kid. I just really liked Matt Holland, friend of the pod, but always liked Matt Holland. And there's someone I always kept an eye on. I was really, really upset when they didn't get promoted under Mick McCarthy. They had a good run. They were in the automatics, and then they kind of tailed off. But when they were playing last season, I kind of kept a keen eye, not just because it was Ipswich, but also on Kieran McKenna. First of all, because he's Irish, and also because he was on the books of Man United, and I'm a Man United supporter. So I was very curious to see how he got on. And of course, he played beautiful football, really, really nice football, was getting really, really good reviews every week. And I just kind of kept a natural eye on them. And then when they got into the Championship, I kind of felt it reminded me a little bit of Norwich around 2012. They were relegated and then just had consecutive promotions. And it reminded me a little bit of them because they played really, really nice football. A little bit like Southampton as well. Southampton did back-to-back promotions, I think, I'm going to say 2011. But again, it was actually down to the fact that they played really, really good football in League One, kind of, continental style football. And then that style of football transferred into the Championship and they got promoted. And I kind of felt it could have gone one of two ways with Ipswich. Either that they played such an open, expansive game that they'd be cut open. And by the way, they were cut open a lot this season, even yesterday against Huddersfield. I mean, the amount of times that they were intercepted and that there was breaks away against them. I kind of felt it could have gone one or two ways. But look, all I was doing was commenting. I had nothing to lose. I put it down. I got a horrible comment off a Middlesbrough fan, and it was very, very satisfying, not only for Ipswich to go up and Leicester to go up, but also for Middlesbrough to miss out on the playoffs. So yeah, I've been very smug for the last couple of days with that. So a nice funny one for me anyway. You in Europe, going to Portugal away match next month. Nick, surely you are with your roots. Yeah, so anyone watching for the first time, I am half Portuguese. I do follow the Portuguese football team very, very closely. I am most likely not going to that game. I think it's on a Tuesday, and unfortunately work commitments wouldn't allow me. But definitely on the bucket list to go and see Ireland Portugal in the away game. I've seen them at home 3 times, I think. 3 or 4. 1, 2. No, 3 times I've seen Ireland play Portugal in Dublin, but I've never seen Ireland play in Portugal. So certainly on the bucket list. It might have been the time to do it in the kind of unusual ground in the middle of nowhere. But I'd say that'd be a good trip. I'm very, very jealous, Nuri. Very, very good trip. But look, next time we play them every so often. Funnily enough, this is our final comment of the night. Not many. People must be afraid of me. They must be afraid of me with David gone. But an interesting comment here, and this is something that we mentioned midweek. Richard Downey, Alex Gilbert is making progress with Borough, is a left winger who should be considered. Yeah, so we did put something out, I think it was yesterday, regarding Alex Gilbert. So anyone that doesn't know Alex Gilbert, he's a former Ireland under-21 winger, formerly of Brentford and formerly of West Brom, I believe. I'm just going to double check that one actually, but I'm pretty sure he was on the books of West Brom at some stage. Yes, West Brom, Brentford, had a loan spell with Swindon and joined Middlesbrough in the summer. Now, he was in a lot of matchday squads, but didn't get any game time. And in the last few weeks, he's gotten a couple of starts. He's actually gotten a couple of goals and assists in the meantime alongside Finn Azaz. Now, he is quite an old school winger. Again, a position that we don't have a huge amount of depth in. I mentioned Danny Armstrong being a left-footed winger. Gilbert's actually right-footed, but very direct. Would add a bit of depth. You know, he is Irish qualified. He is Irish capped at underage, so he's kind of I wouldn't say a ready-made player to come in. He's still a little bit raw for a 23-year-old, but a very, very good player and someone who could come in there. What I would say is he will probably he might have that little bit of momentum to maybe squeeze into the squad. I mean, for the most part, you have to look at who's ahead of him. I mean, Chidozie Ogbene has had a bit of an injury layoff. Mikey Johnson will be involved in the playoffs, so it's very, very uncertain whether he'll feature in the summer or not. And then the other players, I mean, Mark Sykes, who's done very, very well for Bristol City this season. You'd imagine he's going to be back in the squad. He's a player who's probably flown under the radar a little bit. But, for the most part, Gilbert could find his way in. Danny Armstrong, I reckon he's going to play for Scotland, so he's not going to be an option. Colm O'Dowda might come in. So you never know. He has a little bit of momentum. He's played more than Ogbene in the last couple of weeks, so, he might be a late bolter. Right, so we actually have a stoppage time comment here from Neri Nurok. So surely even you are not still holding a torch for Hervé Renard. I'm going to check the odds now for Hervé Renard. And you know what? He's not even in the top 50, so it doesn't look like he's going to be there. The one thing I would say, Nuri, and to anyone listening with Hervé Renard, the whole idea, the whole timeline of this appointment of the the managerial appointment being in September because of contractual issues and that kind of thing. A lot of people would say that points in the direction of Sagnol finishing up with Georgia at the Euros, but it could also point in the direction of Hervé Renard finishing up with the French women at the Olympics. So if you look at some of the toppling managers, so like John O'Shea is unattached. Well, he's with Ireland at the moment, but he's not attached to any club. Chris Hughton, Steve Bruce, not attached to anyone. Lee Carsley is out of the running. Anthony Barry, yes, that's possibly one. Willie Sagnol, yes, that's possibly one. But for the most part, if you were to look at the timeline, if you were to look at some of the managers linked, Hervé Renard would fit that timeline. Can we finance it? I don't think so. Would he be my number one choice? Absolutely. I think the next manager to come in, I haven't been on the show lately, so I haven't really been able to chime in with this, but I feel that we have a very, very good squad, a very, very young squad, a young squad that probably wasn't managed correctly or utilized to their maximum. I feel that we are maybe, literally, and this will sound awful, but I literally feel that we are a Declan Rice and a Jack Grealish off being a very competitive team. If you look at Wales at Euro 2016, similar kind of squad, talented lads, young lads, enthusiastic lads, but they had a couple of quality players to kind of back them up. Was their manager fantastic? And Chris Coleman, who was linked with the Ireland job? Not necessarily, but they did have those fantastic players. I feel because we don't necessarily have a limited team, but a raw team and a team that isn't quite that with players that aren't quite elite. Evan Ferguson hasn't quite gotten there yet, and apart from that, there's no one else. Nathan Collins, I think, is probably one of the closer players, and he hasn't quite gotten to that elite level. I feel that we need a manager who will maximize this squad, who will get them playing out of their skin, who will set them up with such a structure that they're very hard to play against and that they are maximized with the resources that they have. And Renard has done that. He's got a track record of doing that. He won an AFCON with Zambia, who had a couple of very good players. Can't remember the player's name. He played with Southampton, striker. Anyway, it's gone out of my head, but wasn't exactly a top-class striker, but he managed to win an AFCON with them. He played with a 4-3-3. He played with a 4-3-3, a very conservative style, but a very, very fluid style. And we saw that with Saudi Arabia in the World Cup. Now, they beat Argentina. That was a limited team, and they beat the eventual World Cup winners. So that's what we need. We need a manager who will maximize the limited resources, get the most out of a young, vibrant team who are maybe just missing those one or two world-class players. And I feel that when you're working with an inexperienced team, you need to have a manager with international experience. And Renard has that. I mean, the day-to-day club stuff, you just don't have that at international level. Plain and simple, you do not have that at international level. You're working 4 or 5 days. The odd time you might get a 1-2 week camp with a couple of games in between. You have a very, very limited time to implement your system, to implement your message. And Renard has so much experience doing that. So for me, he will be the choice, but I don't think it's going to happen. And as Nuri Nurek alludes to here, he says, but the cost, Nick, the cost. Here, Nuri Nurek, unfortunately. We will not be able to afford him. But look, we'll keep dreaming and fingers crossed we end up with a Hervé Renard or someone of his ilk. So look, we are going to leave it there. Before you do go, if you're listening to this on Spotify, make sure that you do hit that subscribe button. We do have a disproportion between listeners and subscribers, so it'd be great to get a subscription there on Spotify or Apple or wherever you listen to your podcast. If you're listening to it on the website, thank you very much, because obviously it's great to get a few website views there as well. And if you're watching on YouTube, if you're watching it live, if you're watching it back, do hit the subscribe button. Of course, we are bringing more content as the summer comes in. We will be bringing the Lansdowne Roar lives to an end for season 2 in the next couple of weeks. Obviously, when the Premier League season ends and there's less to talk about with the national team, we do kind of render things off a little bit. We'll go into the June window, and then we are talking at the moment, myself, Dave, and Martin, talking about a mini series that we might be doing just after the window. So do keep your eyes peeled for that. But as I said, any subscriptions will be most welcome. And of course, do check us out on our socials. We're on Instagram, we're on Facebook, we're on X. Do check out Lansdowne Roar, and of course our sister page, Lansdowne Row. So we're going to leave it there. We will be back next Sunday for another live. So until then, all the best and take care.